Hi, Catalina. I am sorry I started without you. I have to make these videos relatively short for uploading purposes. But I thought that you would want to see how your babies are coming through. Right now, I am doing another round of color on them. Um, this is a wash layer, which is the first layer I use. Other people do it differently. Some people model first. It's just personal preference. I do washes, which is how I set the skin tone. I make the skin tone by doing washes. The darker the baby, the more washes we're going to use. This baby is primarily done with the primary, sorry, I couldn't think of the word, the primary method, which is simply layers of red, blue, and yellow. And I'm on yellow right now. But as you can see, it is an incredibly light, very, very watered, or technically it's not water, technically it's paint thinner, but very, very thin. You can see the wet on the doll, but you cannot see really any color. And that is because it is super thin down. If you make it thicker, it's going to look painted. It'll look like it's painted. And that's not what we want. When we're making a reborn, we want it to look real, like you're looking at the actual skin. So we make multiple layers, and I do them in what I call rounds, which is red, blue, and yellow. I alternate what I start with. This time I'm starting with yellow. And we're going to do this wash layer. Now I say primarily primary because in order to get the baby darker, I could do it with all primaries, but it would take a lot longer. So I do periodic layers of burnt umber or burnt sienna. With your babies, I'm doing umber because we're really going for the darker. African American, AA, ethnic, they call it a lot of things. But we're going for the darker skin tone. So I do occasional layers of burnt umber. And this is going to help darken the baby a little faster. And I think it looks really natural. It's how I did Zahara. And I had another ethnic baby that I did as a private order, as a commission, like yours are. And I used the same process on her. So this is called pouncing, by the way. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm using this sponge to make sure that there's no paint pooling, for one thing, because that's very important. You don't want pooling paint. But you put the paint on and then you pounce it off. And what that does is removes any brush strokes. Again, it's all about realism. It's all about making it look as natural as possible. And of course, natural babies don't have brush strokes. So, little baby. And I alternate too where I start. Sometimes I start on the face like I'm doing right now. And sometimes I start on the back of the head. It honestly depends on the color I'm using and if I am concerned about the thickness of the paint or if I've made new paint. Then I start on the back of the head where it will be covered with hair and you won't see it as much. But, yeah, that's what we do there. We're just getting to all of the little all of the little crevices, and I divide the head in quarters. Make sure you're okay. Each ear is its own quarter, the front and then the back of the baby. And I do that so that the paint is easy to work with. Now, this is heat set paint, so it won't cure enough till I bake it. And I bake every few rounds. When I start feeling that it needs to be baked, I'll bake it. It's after all the babies I've done, it's kind of, I don't know, it's second nature, I guess. I notice when the paint starts feeling funny going on, feeling different, and then I go ahead and bake. But we're gonna, and if you can see what I'm doing, when you do this, it thins out, it removes the top layer. Like I said, it removes brush strokes. It makes everything look a little more realistic. So that's the face. Now we're going to do one ear. And we're just going to get here. We're going to get nicely behind the ear. And that's, I've seen a few artists that they don't get behind the ear really well. Now, when I showed you the first picture, you'll have noticed that the colors in the ear were blues and yellows, and that is used, it's called a undertone, and it's used to get the baby darken the areas that need darkening, and I use powders for that. Now, I may have to go back and apply some more powder. We don't know yet. As I do this baby, if I need to go back and reapply things. But you can also, I don't know if you can see the veins, but the veins are, it's got all this veining and everything. And that is part of the realism. Now, the veins will be harder to see as your baby gets darker. And I may need to redo them a little bit. It honestly will depend. With the darker skinned babies, I find it's a lot of work. Because to make them real, it's really a lot of work. Because you can't see some things as easily in the darker skinned babies. So some of the things like veining and the undertones can get lost in some of the babies when there are darker skinned. But the two I've made that are ethnic babies, I thought came out really nicely. And the mamas love them. So, here, I forgot to do something. In order to prevent paint peeling, I use these brushes to get in the crevices that are deep, and there's a very deep crevice behind this ear, and this one as well. So I make sure that I use this brush so that there's no paint pooling. Paint pooling can be really bad because it gives a thickness to it, and you won't want any paints to be thick. Now, you can see how very thin that is. And when I am going and doing the next step, which for me the next step is texture layers, and it's applied completely differently, and the paint is slightly thicker, so I add a little more color to the paint and make it a little thicker. And then it's applied with sponges that I put plucked out parts of. So it's literally the texture layer. And we're going to pouncy, pouncy, pouncy. We're just going to pounce that color down, remove the brush strokes, make it look more realistic. And it may be hard to see progress the wash layers, they can be difficult for anybody who isn't the artist, and they can be hard to see on camera. But let me see if I can. Let me see if I can show you here. Can you see? Let's see. Oops. Let me turn this around. Can you see the veining? The natural veining on the baby? Yeah. Something I take a lot of pride in. Okay. This is a 10-minute video. This is about as much as I can do, 10 minutes, and still get it uploaded. So I will upload it to Facebook, and they're coming around.